Hey everyone, I am Terrybad, and these are my thoughts about Marvel Superheroes Draft. So basically, I am on this Broader Team Handshake, and even though I fell off the Broader at the last PT, I did love drafting Marvel superheroes, and so I made this presentation for my teammates to showcase some spots that I thought they're missing out on, or just some thoughts I had, I found extra interesting or important about the format. And in this video, I'm going to try to recreate this presentation I gave them, and also I will showcase all of my trophy decks in this format. So basically, I had an incredible win rate in Marvel superheroes. First of all, I want to say this: I never draft on Magic Arena. I only draft on Magic Online, and I in the elimination draft lobby, because these are both drafts, and these are when you every 2 weeks after the set, or like the first 2 weeks when a set releases, usually before a Broader or before World Championship, all the best players in the world, they gather on Magic Online to draft in these both drafts, and it's just extremely fun to compete against some of the best in the world. And in this case, what happened was I was very, very dominant. In my first 20 drafts, I actually had a 75% win rate. Like when I made this tweet, I had done 24 drafts with 73% win rate, or 74 almost. I was very dominant. In the end, the format I ended up doing 50 drafts with 70% win rate against the best players in the world, and I kind of feel I was just exploiting them, and I was especially exploiting the fact that, in my opinion, the 17 land stats about this set were quite misleading. I would also like you to subscribe. This is like my first attempt at doing this kind of YouTube content, and if you like this, please subscribe. If we get to 1500 subs at some point, it means I will get monetized by YouTube, and that would really motivate me to do more videos like this. So it costs you nothing. If you want to see more of this stuff, subscribe, and maybe share the video with your friends, or post about it in some Discord servers or Facebook groups or whatever, or on Twitter and so on. Yeah, so let's get into it. So I will talk about some stuff that I'm sure you will think these cards are not good today. But first of all, how I like to approach most, or like basically every limited format, is I try to think about metagames. And in this format, there were like two kind of areas that really stood out, and those were the mid-range decks, and then the white, especially combined with blue, the flyer aggro decks. So these are like the two big pillars of the meta game. The more the data came out, the better people got, especially at figuring out these blue aggressive decks that were trying to play flyers, play the shield kit. And this was, I would say, the most common deck people tried to draft. And at first, I was kind of exploiting them by drafting these mid-range decks myself, which are just like a little bit over the top, trying to beat especially these aggressive decks. But later on in the format, when people got better at it, these mid-range decks became also a very, very, staple of the format. And then there were some other archetypes. I think black-white aggressive was also fairly common. And then some other archetypes, like sometimes people played like blue-black, tempo-based decks. That's like a small part of the meta game. There were like some white-green decks, often trying to do like go wide or some counter stuff. Sometimes like blue-green decks, but they were not very common. And then there's like a fairly reasonable amount of people started to figure out this red-green super strength sweet ball style deck, so that became kind of part of the metagame as well. I would say like the 4 was very vocal about it on Twitter as well, so that's how it started. And then like black red is like on their own island here. And that deck, like, people mostly, I would say, misunderstood and didn't really want to draft unless they had to. But I'm actually reasonably high on black red, or like I don't mind drafting black red if the seat is open for me, which was fairly often, I would say. And then another thing was this blue red artifacted decks. Sometimes they were playing the bow. This is something that I specifically noticed, that blue red, funnily enough, was a thing that Sanctum of all players in these drafts quite liked. Like I remember playing against Ryan Condon and CFD Sock multiple times on this deck. And then basically what I figured out from this format was that these aggressive / mid-range decks existed, and then like these rampy mid-range decks, like a little bit bigger beefy creatures. These were like basically the pillars of the format, and what really was missing was control. Nobody was basically drafting control, or like a very rarely, and there are some reasons why they were not doing that, but in the end I kind of drafted at large 2 decks or 3 decks. I drafted these like green mid-range decks, and then I started to draft control decks that were especially good in this format because they're very dominant against the mid-range decks and have good game against the aggressive decks. And then, you know, sometimes I would draft black red just because it was so wide open. Yeah. And now this is what I think is the key to this format. It's the removal spells. One thing I noticed was that removal is a little bit less available than it is in other draft formats. So I started to just first pick these cards and second pick these cards very happily. And another really important thing is that all of these removal spells here on the left hand side, they are they have a positive improvement in hand on 17 land statistics, meaning that drawing any of these cards improves your win rate, which is great, obviously. And then these two were like, you know, the little bit weaker removal spells, like Helicar Strike was close to 0 and Tracker Dust was -1 improvement in hand, but I still think they're totally playable if you find the right spots for it. Also, by the way, don't like pay attention to the size of these cards here. They're kind of random. I just tried to put all the removal spells here, and they didn't really, like, the size doesn't really matter. Is my point. They're just all here. I guess I'm happy with all of them, kind of. Maybe like Murdoch's Crusade is one that I'm a little bit less happy about. So another thing I want to point out is that all of this, like a large part of the metagame is, you know, this blue-white deck has a lot of X2s, X1s, and the black-white deck has a lot of X2s, some X3s, and then, you know, the big creature decks, you know, they have chunky 4-drops, but they're very reliant on this Undercover Skrull, which I think is like top 2 common in the set. So again, this is an X1 on turn 2, which made me really high on cards like Lightning Strike, Widow's Spite, even Hulk Smash, Go Nuts. Like, you just want to have these cheap, efficient plays because they kill everything that like matters for your opponents. So for that reason, I was really high on the removal spells, and then obviously the best ones were the 3-mana ones, Cruel Alliance, Wave and Frozen in Ice, because they both deal with the early game, cheap and efficient. Like, Cruel Alliance is the top, in my mind, the top common in the set because it goes really well against aggressive decks. It's cheap, it gains you life, so it's great tempo play. But also, like these 3, they deal really well with big chunky creatures that some of the decks were playing. So just having like this, you kind of want to have some diversity of removal spells, but these 3 were the best. And then Widow's Spite, Lightning Strike, perfectly fine cards. And then the other thing it was, which is the reason I think why people kind of didn't really figure out how to draft control decks, was that there's very little straight up card advantage in the set. A lot of the stuff is conditional, or, you know, you need to make it work kind of stuff. Like Future's Forge was one of the, like, this is the best card advantage in the set because it's unconditional. You can just play it and sack it and draw your cards, and it's like very easy to make work, but it's just one card. And like almost everything else, like even like this Bold Biochemist, which is like 2 mana 1/3, and then you pay 6, or you can play it as a 6 mana 2/4 draw 2. Like if you play it early in the game, they can kill it, or later on it's like a 2/4 for 6 draw 2, which is like a little bit clunky and not great, you know. A lot of these cards, you know, you can see like Agent 13 is a very strong card, but you have to be attacking. Your opponent can disrupt that by removal spells. You know, stuff like Atuma has the same problem. Yeah, like Jessica Jones or Misty Knight, like all this kind of stuff. You have to like untap with this creature or whatever. Like your opponent can disrupt you. Like even Thirst for Knowledge, like you need to be playing artifacts. Like it's not easy to make this work. Black had a little bit better because it had Visions of Villainy, Hydra Infiltration, and this Claw and Ninja. Like these cards are pretty strong. And also I want to say, like all of these cards in here, including like they're sorted by color: white, blue, black, green, red. It doesn't also have literally every card advantage card in it, but all of these ones here, they have positive improvement in hand. Again, to illustrate my point, like 17 lands likes these cards, they improve their win rate. And then the ones here, they're like, you know, 0 or a slight minus. Some of them that I like is Visions of Love, Cold Damage Control, Deploy. Like these cards are good, but you need to figure out the synergies, how to make them work. So they are not good just by themselves. And then this is, you know, the Shane corner here, which I like. These cards have really poor stats. I think Rewrite History is kind of bad, but it's possible to make it work. Hex Magic, I think, is very hard to make work, and Robot Domination, I think, is actually a good card, but I think the average player on 70 lands just completely did not understand what to do with this card, and I'm going to talk about it later in detail. Okay, so one thing that I figured out about the format early on was that there's simply more rares in white. Like you can see, there's 8 rares. Also, all of these rares here on this picture are rares that I would first pick over any common and over a majority of uncommons. Like you might not agree with literally every card on the picture, but you should agree with the majority of them. And what I was trying to highlight here was that, you know, there's 8 white rares that are first picks, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more. So basically half of the rares, or, you know, 14 out of 39, they're white. And then if you look, you know, blue has a good healthy amount of rares, and then black has some, and red has much less, and green has the fewest. So a lot of people are going to start drafts in white. And I actually think one thing that is really misunderstood in this set is that the white rares are so strong, and I think they affect the game in hand win rate of the commons and uncommons a lot. So general public had like this conception that white is just the best color in the set, and I actually don't think it's true. It is true if you like think about the rares, but if you eliminate the rares, I think actually white is not that good at common and uncommon compared to some other colors. And it doesn't like the depth doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter that the 3 worst red commons are not that good, because it really it doesn't really matter how good the 3 worst white commons are in the set as well, because it's really about playing in Magic in 2026 is all about playing rares, uncommons, and the best commons in each color, and you need to figure that out. And like, yes, every common in white is basically playable, but it doesn't matter because you don't really want to play the bottom 3 or bottom 5 commons in any color, to be honest. Because if your deck is so heavily full of commons, like your deck is not going to be great anyway, because the uncommons are just simply way better. But what I wanted to say was, look, these white rares were really affecting the win rate of the commons, and it was very misleading for people, I think. And people just have this misconception because they're so blindly following the stats. And actually, if you sort commons improvement in hand on 17 lands, you will see a completely different picture. There's way fewer white commons at the top. Even a lot of the green commons drop off as well. Blue still remains strong, so that made me think that blue and black are probably the two best colors in the set. Okay, and next up, I wanted to talk about black-red archetypes specifically because I thought this was something that people didn't really grasp. Especially in the stats, it was really difficult to figure out how to make black-red work. So this is one of my earlier drafts that gave me the idea how to draft black-red. But basically what I think was like the way I wanted to trio with black-red was I needed to get something like Avengers Under Siege usually, but it's not necessary. This Hydra Assault Robot is like a key common that goes late, and basically what you want to be doing is you want to get many of them, but you also, this card is not good by itself and they're not good in multiples unless, but if you fill this condition, they're actually very good, very strong, unless you have cards that generate multiple villains / artifacts into play at once. So cards like Avengers Under Siege, Robot Domination, Hydra Troopers, Anim Sola because it gets to generate another villain every turn. Cards like this make the Hydra Assault Robot good fast. So this deck was a trophy deck, and this deck was a 2-1 deck. I think maybe also a trophy deck. I think this was another trophy deck. And you can see the same concept here, you know, Hydra Assault Robots, Avenger Under Siege. The combination with the Treasures and Hydra Assault Robot from the Avenger Under Siege was especially good. Parent Strucker was another key card that would let you multi-spell villains. Like if you achieve this, you actually, Madame Mask, another one, you know, you play this, you discard a card, you draw this card, you make another villain immediately. This is what you want to be doing, and this creates like this kind of aggressive combo deck, and it overwhelms your opponent really fast. So I think this was the way to draft black-red in this format mostly. Obviously there's like this small sub-archetype of just playing cool cards, and if both colors are open, it can happen. Like Doom Reign Supreme is another. I think this was a bomb rare in this archetype specifically. If you get all the cards that make multiple villains, because then if you can proc this card in like 2 turn cycles, it's very strong, I think. And it's like a Hydra Assault Robot rare version, basically. Like this card is common and this is rare, so I think it's a better version of that card. All stuff like Agents of Hydra was great too, because it creates this kind of a board stall mode situation where your opponent basically can't attack you because you will be able to trigger your stuff and pink them and stuff like that. And this is another one. You know, Madame Hydra is another one. I think this card was very good. It would almost always wheel, and it would make it would trigger your stuff. Like in this deck, I had Doom Reign Supreme and Robot Domination, which I thought was also a very strong combination. You play Doom Reign Supreme, it gains you life. So whenever you lose life for Robot Domination, you would gain life, and then later on you make 3 villains immediately. They trigger this 3 times, and you get to proc it off fast. So that's how I thought you should draft Black-Red. Black-Red had like a healthy amount of trophies at the Broader 2. I think in day 1 maybe they had equal amount of trophies to Blue-White, if I remember correctly. And now I'm talking about some single cards that I thought were extremely underrated. So if I said overall in these drafts I had 70% win rate, then with this card, Death to Our Enemies, my decks that I had Death to Our Enemies had 81% win rate in my 50 drafts. So just so you know. And now the way to make this card work was like I visioned this card basically as a control deck enabler. And what I mean by that is that it's like the most basic evaluation of the card is that it's a 2-for-1 removal spell that takes a little bit of work to make work. But also, it doesn't only just kill 2 creatures, it can burn out your opponent, and it makes treasures. And if you're able to turn these treasures into other cards or other abilities with cards like Bullseye or with Vision of Love, this card actually generates a lot of value. So yeah, So basically what you wanted to do with death to our enemies was you wanted to combine it with, first of all, there was like this, this shell in red, Visions of Love, Hulk Smash, Lightning Strike, Repulsor Blast, Photon Blast Barrage. Like this was all in red. So you could almost draft like heavy red base decks and then use the treasures to splash for stuff. Visions of Love was really, really key. And luckily this card would basically always wheel. But how Visions of Love works with Death to our enemies is that you cast Vision of Love, Death to our enemies trigger goes on the stack, you create the tapped treasure, and then you can immediately sacrifice the tapped treasure to Vision of Love to draw 2 cards. So you create instant speed 2 mana draw 2, which is very strong. And you want cards like this with Death to our enemies because you want to keep the non-creature spells flowing. So a card like Futurist Forge is great too for the same reason. It keeps the cards flowing, so you can cast more non-creature spells and you can proc the Death to our enemies really fast. Like if you can proc this in 2 or 3 turns, you kill 2 creatures, you get all the tempo lost back and you don't die. And then all of these, cheap removal spells go really well. Photon Blast for us is exceptional because in the early mid game you can use this to kill like two creatures on your opponent's side just to slow them down, which makes your Death to our enemies better because you can start taking advantage of the value it provides. And then later on, if you have generated 4 treasures, you can use Photon Blast Barrage to cast it for X equals 7, X equals 8 and just swipe their whole board. So it plays well with like both sides of the card, early or late. Visions of Villainy was like another card similar to Visions of Love and Futurist Forge, where you could just cast for 2 or 3 mana, draw 2 to keep the cards flowing. But I ended up not really playing this card in the Death to our enemies decks often because Visions of Love would just always wheel and they would get like 2 or 3 of them anyway. And then the other cards that I liked with it were, unconditional cards that you could always cast, especially the removal spells like Cruel Alliance, Heart of Defeat, stuff like that. Like removal spells in other colors, so they're not all on this picture, but like the Frozen in Ice and Web Up and stuff like that, they're all great. And then like Dependable Quinjet and the Restorative Technique, you might think that these cards like don't really go so well with Death to our enemies, but they do actually go really well because you can always cast them. You don't need your opponent to have a creature on the board, you don't need to have a treasure in play, like they don't have any conditions. So in a way they're like kind of cantrips in a way, like they make more mana, so they let you cast multiple non-creature spells like your next turn and stuff like that. So, and then what also ended up happening is that you would have Death to our enemies and 2 Dependable Quinjets, so then Traktos would actually become a pretty strong card. And then on the left hand side they're like a little bit more conditional cards, so these I liked slightly less in these decks. Hulk Smash was, Hulk Smash still has this mode, destroy target non-creature artifact, so if you have a treasure and you really need to go to the 4th chapter to deal 7 damage to 2 creatures, you can kill your own treasure to do that if you want. And then like stuff like Helicarrier Strike and Take Up the Shield I like the least. Helicarrier Strike especially because your opponents would like read you for it and they wouldn't attack into it, so it would often become very awkward in your hand. You wouldn't be able to trigger Death to our enemies. I Am Iron Man actually was both bad and good. If you have no artifacts in play, it would be bad, but once you get the first treasure, it actually would become great because it's a cantrip, so you get the trigger and you also get to draw a card. And then that would make like cards like this daggers and the bow actually playable in this deck, because both of these can for 1 mana trigger the Death to our enemies, but also you could use I Am Iron Man on them to block a creature or something. You could sacrifice or discard them to Visions of Love, like, and that makes your Visions of Love better when you don't even draw the Death to our enemies, which is great. And then the other cards here, they're a little bit conditional, like Widow's Bite and We Say Thine, you wouldn't always get the target or like a profitable target, so that might come up. And yeah, so that's what I think about Death to our enemies. And then next up we have Robot Domination. So this card I had 73, like the decks that I played with Robot Domination had 73.3% win rate. There was 11 decks like that, which is also impressive. Like Okay, let's go back 1 second. So Death enemies, I think, I don't know exactly what is the winner to 70 lands, but it's under 50%, like 48 or something. And I would treat this card as like a 60% win rate uncommon. I would be pretty happy with third pick. I would just basically never pass this card when I would see it. While Robot Domination is a little bit different. This, like, if to put it on the scale of, I think it's like 56% game in hand winner card that actually had like 45%, but I think it's because people didn't really understand how to use this card. So I didn't actually draft it in my first 10 drafts, but at some point they started to realize that they have like this mid-range decks, and they have, you know, some cheap removal and have some ramp, but then I would just struggle to get card advantage because there's so few in this set. And then I would constantly see this card wheel, you know, it comes to me like pick 11 or something. And I was like, maybe this card is good. I'll try to play with it. And then it ended up performing exceptionally well in my decks because it was the exact missing piece. Me taking all the removal spells early would result in me having a lot of removal, and then I would just need some card advantage to make these cheap removal spells work. So the key to make this card work is basically to draft a lot of these cheap removal spells, like you can see here in the right hand corner, like Lightning Strike, Hulk Smash, all the sweepers, you know, Avengers Disassemble, Photon Blast Barrage, Avengers Under Siege. Cruel Alliance is like exceptional because it gains you life, you get the life back. All like Widow's Bite, this even Whiplash I count as a cheap removal spell in a way, because you can play it on turn 1 and then you can just block their 2-2 or whatever, like their 2-drop. So these kind of things, like all of these cards, like you want to be in a spot where you are not behind on board and you have like a reasonable life to win. Like let's say you go to your turn 4, your opponent has like a 2-2 in play and nothing else because you killed their 3-drop. And then you play Robot Domination and you're at like 16 life or something. It's really good for you because now this game changes. You can start like, you know, casting more removal spells, playing creatures. Every time you block or trade something, you get cards back. So the game kind of snowballs really fast out of your opponent's control. And then the other thing you wanted to do with Robot Domination was life gain. So all of these cards, like all the small life gain would add up. Like even the lands, like just having some lands in your deck that would gain life eventually would just add up and would let you stabilize. Because Robot Domination is like a super read the bones. Like it's 4 mana, draw 3 cards, you lose 3 life, but you're up 2 cards. But then you also get 3 tokens, 2/2s that completely stabilize the board if you get to proc it. So you kind of just need to prolong the game, stay alive. Like Brave Brawler was amazing because you could play it on turn 2, attack, gain some life, then you play Robot Domination, then you trade your Brave Brawler with their creature. Like your life total would be really high, so you would just outguard them basically. And then another very strong synergy was with Undercover Skrull, because it's, again, if you cast Robot Domination on turn 3, you're probably not far behind on board, so you could take advantage of the Robot Domination. And then other creatures were like stuff that would provide some small value, or that you would just want to block or jump block anyway with. So stuff like Ninja of the Hand that you can play for 5 mana, make them discard. Now you're up 1 card, you block or you trade with something because it has Death Touch, you get another card, like you're up 2 cards. The Claw and the Hero are kind of the same thing. Death Touch 1 mana creature is exceptional. Like these 2 guys there just provide some value, and you get to, you know, jump block with them with no repercussions basically. And then there's this other thing, you also want to have like some effects in your deck that are this draw, discard, or like Aim Synthoids is Surveil 2, so stuff that you can mill or draw, discard, like connive creatures from your hand to the graveyard to trigger the Robot Domination. And especially good are the ones that let you do it instant speed, like the Land Cyclers or Misty Knight, because once you get the Robot Domination to have 2 counters on it, and then you can do it instant speed, it actually creates this incredible spot in the games where your opponent can't attack you, or if they attack you, you instant speed like Land Cycle, a creature to the graveyard, you draw a card and you make 3 2/2s, and then you get to have a really strong block. So I really enjoyed that part of the card as well. Yeah, and then there's also this, little bonus with Hydra Assault Robot and Doom Reign Supreme, where Robot Domination would generate 3 Robot Villain Artifact creature tokens, so you would trigger these cards 3 times. So sometimes I would have a deck with, I would have 2 Hydra Assault Robots in play. You proc the Robot Domination, and you draw a card, you make 3 2/2s, and your opponent takes 6 damage, and they basically immediately die from that spot. So that was another really cool synergy. Hawkeye's Bow was something I didn't discover myself. Some of my teammates did, but this card actually really performed really good with Hawkeye Young Avenger. If you equip the Young Avenger and attack, it deals your opponent 3 damage, and then it deals it deals your opponent 4 damage, and then it deals also 3 damage, so it's like 7 damage swing immediately. You didn't really want to play this card in decks with like just flyers, like you play 1 mana, like the Doombot, 1 mana 1/1 flying, and 3 mana 2/2 flying, and then equip the Hawkeye's Bow. That was like a little bit not good enough. It was like a builder on card, but if you would have Hawkeye Young Avenger and all these like value creatures that you can tap for to ping your opponent, that would you could like one-shot burn out your opponents, especially if you had like Captain America Living Legend on the splash or something like that. Like that would be possible. You could deal like 16 damage or something in a turn. Obviously it had some other synergies, Vision of the Lab, Bullseye, like I talked before, and then it actually had pretty reasonable stats in black red as well, and you can combine it with Ronin or the other equipment synergies, which makes sense. Or if you put it on a lifelink creature, when it triggers, the creature deals the damage, you immediately gain a life as well, so that could come up. And Kingpin Enforcer is especially nice, because when your Hawkeye's Bow is bad, you can sack it to draw a card, so that was kind of cool. And now, next up, I'm going to go through all the trio decks that I drafted. There's 16 of them. And I'll just go through them quickly. And so let's go. So this is the first one. They are not in chronological order, by the way. They're just ordered by color pairs or whatever, something like that. So this was a black-white deck. You can see, I have a healthy amount of removal spells. Like there's 6 removal spells in this deck. Even more if you count the Superhero or Avenger Under Siege. A lot of card advantage, double Visions of Villainy. If you have like a lot of this cheap removal spells, you don't really need so many 2-drops in your deck. This deck like trying to grind. Obviously it has great rares. I will tell you though, I drove it with this deck and I never drew Daredevil or Superhero Civil War. This Avenger Under Siege though, I drew it multiple times and it was exceptional. Next up, we have this deck. So this is one of the earlier decks I drafted. This Helicat made me draft mono green. I wanted to try mono green. Later on, I figured out that there's actually no reason to draft mono green, except for Squirrel Girl maybe. But like most of the splashing is so easy that like you don't. It's just a waste. And Helicat is sadly a little weird card. They don't play well in multiples. Like you could draft mono green and get 3 of them, but it doesn't work because it's a legendary creature that comes back from graveyard, so it kind of never dies. So the second copy in your hand is horrible. But yeah, I mean, this deck was obviously great because it has a really low curve, 10 1 and 2 drops, and then all of these, 5 1-mana spells. Even Punishing Punch can be a 1-mana spell, so like 6. It's like it would just be really cheap and efficient. Next up, we have one of the black red decks I already talked about, so I'm gonna skip this one. And then this is another green black deck. The same like formula that I talked about before. You just have a lot of cheap removal, or like a healthy amount of cheap removal. Cruel Alliance. It has Robot Domination. Like one thing I didn't talk about is Guerrilla Gorilla can be used to, if your Robot Domination has 3 blank counters on it, you can sacrifice Guerrilla Gorilla to target the Robot Domination, and it would trigger, get the 4th blank counter. You would sacrifice it, make 3 2/2s, and then the Gorilla like wouldn't kill your Robot Domination. Or, like you would get to trade it in for a card and 3 2/2s. Yeah, this deck also had a really cool synergy with the Serpent Society and Death Touch creatures. I would like sacrifice Serpent Specialists to Kingpin Enforcers and kill another one of their creatures and stuff like that, which was cool. Like splashing is really easy. I'm splashing for a rare here. So this is the only trophy I have with white green. It kind of developed a theory I had about white green where I think white green was really good at creating port stalls. Like you would be this aggressive deck, but because you don't have as much evasion as other aggressive decks, you would play a healthy amount of reach creatures, and you would kind of get in board stalls where your opponent's life total would be at like 8 and yours would be at like 17, but then you have this massive board, they have this massive board, because you are like, their life total is lower than yours, they can't really attack you, so otherwise you attack them back and they die, so they're like clogging up the board. And to solve this problem, I think you need some kind of engines. Like in this deck I have Political Triumph and the Origin of the Avengers combined with Doc Samson, so I could just overwhelm my opponent with like this massive burst of counters. Like you backstory building, draw cards, like you would need some kind of engine like that to make white green work basically. Next up we have this Death to Our Enemies Robot Domination deck. So like you can see here, I'm playing 15 lands with 3 land cyclers. I have Surveillance Room that can surveil stuff to graveyard for Death to Our Enemies, or for Robot Domination, I mean, sorry. Yeah, this deck was very, very strong. It has, you know, a good amount of cheap cards, Photon Blast Barrage to keep me alive, and then it would just bury your opponent with cards, and with these 2-for-1s. Next up we have another soupy deck, double Undercover Skrull. My mana was so great in here with thanks to the Death to Our Enemies, double Avengers Disassemble, which are both fixing and ways to keep my early game going, get a good double splash for this Coming of Galactus. Doc Samson helps with that. You know, it's just your average mid-range control deck, kind of. This is one of the earlier blue-red decks. I think this deck was also great. I really liked how Machine Smith Automation played with Avenger Disassembled, where you would play to the board, and your opponent would kind of think that they need to raise these automations because overall they're going to grow bigger, but then they would overcommit to the board, and then you would play, because you play an artifact, they become 4/4s. Then you play Avenger Disassembled and wipe all the small stuff, and you keep your 4/4 or 5/5 trample guys, and that kind of wins the game. Obviously, Vision Quest is great. It's a pretty simple deck, I would say. Oh, one thing that is cool here is this Stark Industry Executive Castle Doom combo, where you get this late game where you make a treasure, your automation gets a counter, you sack the treasure to Castle Doom, you make a 3/3 automation gets another counter. Like, it's this kind of grindy value engine. And this is one of those decks I talked about, like red base soup decks. Like, this Death to Our Enemies are really key here because they're fixing my mana, but also they're my early game. My curly is like a little weird here, a little too many 4s. I would like to have some cheaper cards, but overall I think this deck played out great. Yeah, like the fixing is just so easy in this format. You can splash for anything. Iron Man, Master of Machines is also, I think, a very strong card with Death to Our Enemies, where you get to make a treasure every turn, draw a card. Like, you don't actually need many artifacts. Like, this deck has 1, 2, 3 actual artifacts in your deck to trigger the Iron Man, but I also have Stark Executive and 2 Death to Our Enemies. So the Iron Man would often be like 6/4 because of the treasures, and they would draw a card every turn. So that was kind of cool. Cold Damage Control is another card that I play in a lot of my decks because it just gets back rares, it gets back, like, I like to draft 2-3 artifacts in my decks so I can get them back and grind games like that. This is another red-based soup deck. Only 1 Death to Our Enemies this time. You can see how cheap the curve is, Hulk Smash, Lightning Strike, double Widow Spite. Like, I'm very, very good at keeping the early game in check. I'm not gonna die some aggressive blue-white decks. And then I even have, I'm splashing for double Frozen Nice Wave Up so I don't die to big stuff. I played this Cold Damage Control in this deck because I was worried that I will run out of win conditions, but that was actually like bad. I should have probably played. It was not worth splashing for it, basically, because Doctor Doom is indestructible and people just couldn't kill it anyway. I could have played like another Visions of Villainy or Red Hulk, maybe, something like that. But this deck was also very good, obviously. There's another one, another soup deck, or like, this. I mean, this is a black green deck splashing for Avengers Under Siege. Again, robot domination. You can see here. I have like these land cyclers. I have these cheap removal spells. Yeah, like a lot of these decks are very similar. This is another soup deck. This is actually a white-based soup deck because I opened Moniker and Bow. Again, I had Robot Domination to draw towards my 2 broken rares, Thor and Moniker and Bow. Actually, what happened in this draft was that Red wasn't particularly open, but I opened Thor in pack 2, so I just figured that I'm going to force my way in there. I think my seat naturally would have been black-white. But yeah, you can see again, like I have so many cheap cards. I have these Brave Brawlers with Lifelink, and then I just need this Robot Domination to make sure I have card advantage and I get to draw these rares and kill my opponent with them. So this deck was very awesome too. I 3-0'd. This is just a normal black-white deck, what ended up happening in this draft was that removal is very contested, or there wasn't many open, so this Ronin Shadowstalker was like extremely key combined with the Stolen Start decks, where I would use it as ways to kill opponents' cards I have to kill. And for that reason, I played 17 lands in this deck, although normally I would want to play 16, but I wanted to make my deck as aggressive as possible, and that meant that I played 1-drops in both black and white, so I needed to have 8 sources for these 1-drops in both colors, and I just tried to make my curve as possible. Like these Night Nurses are actually 2-drops, but I put them here because you don't really cast them in turn 2. Yeah, so that's what I tried to do here. And then next up we have another soup deck, another white-based soup deck, and this deck was very strong too, because of all the rares. Like I splash for white rares from all the colors because that's just what happens when you draft white. This was a little bit more aggressive leaning. I was splashing for Futures Forge and I thought that was great. The cold damage control was great. It gets back to Superhero Civil War. It's really good with Mjolnir Hammer of Thor because you can discard it to Pyroclasm, then get it back, stuff like that. The Sentry Golden Guardian was like exceptional in this deck because I have Super Adaptoid and Patriot, which are really good with it, and yeah, that was mostly the reason. But I thought that it also plays really good with Stormwind Rider, where your opponents think can't attack you. This is again another soup deck, like a control deck. This time blue-red, splash, splash, splash. Double Futures Forge, Hydraulic Helper to keep me alive in the early game. You can see like all of these decks have like 10, 11, 12 non-creature spells, and if you have those numbers, Death to Our Enemies was actually like a very, very strong card. I would recommend taking early in draft. But the best part was that I would be happy to third pick it, but sometimes there would be another good card in the pack, and I would take the other good card, like let's say Cruel Alliance or Web Up or something, and then the Death to Our Enemies would just wheel like majority of the time, which was awesome because you would just get like a first pick level card on the wheel so often. This is, another soup deck. This is green, black, splash red. This Hawkeye Master Marksman splash is not necessary. I like this card quite a lot, so I did splash for it, but you don't have to. You could have played like Hydra Infiltration or something. Super Skrull, obviously a bomb. Let's go up. Now, these are all my 16 decks. And this was the presentation that I gave to my teammates. And then after that, at the Pro Tour, I wanted to highlight 2 decks. So this is a deck Arne Huschenbeth drafted that he went 3-0 with in day 1. And you can see, 4 Lightning Strike, double Death to Our Enemies. I think this deck is completely broken. He went 3-0, 6-0 at the Pro Tour. And it's just a perfect example of what I was talking about. And he didn't get much card advantage at this one Futures Force and Mr. Fantastic. Mr. Fantastic, another combo with Death to Our Enemies, by the way. So he decided to play Rewrite History to combine with his Hydraulic Helpers, and that's a really smart idea by him to make this, card that he probably got last pick work, just to provide him card advantage, get back his Lightning Strikes. Like his late game is really, really cool because you can literally burn out your opponent here. Death to Our Enemies 7 in the face, some Lightning Strikes, get back Lightning Strikes, but also you have, creatures you can attack with. So this deck is super cool. And this is a day 2 draft deck by Alex Rohan where he went 2-1 And again, this is like how you get a card on the wheel, death to our enemies, and you just turn it into an extra win in your draft seat that maybe most people would go 1-2. And again, the same thing, you know, all these cheap removal spells, double barrage, and then, you know, use this death to our enemies to ramp. Another cool card that we talked about was the 10 rings, which basically everyone considered unplayable card, but this is, you know, I think it's slightly worse than the Endstone. The Endstone was like Endstone is another card that in Edge of Eternity's draft, this was like a C plus on stats, but in my mind, this was a first big card easily, because if you know how to make this card work, it's excellent. And the 10 rings is like worse than that for sure, but it always wheels, and if your deck needs card advantage, you can play it. So basically the joke with this card is that you draw up to 10 cards, and then you need to sacrifice it so you don't die. So Alex, for this reason, was playing Visions of Love, and he actually intentionally double splashed for Atlantis attacks just for the scenario that when he played the 10 rings, he needed to bounce it back to his hand. And, you know, another thing about this card is that you know, want to ramp it out. So he has Undercover Skrull, Stark Executive, Doc Samson, so he can ramp it out. And yeah, this is like, you know, a complete garbage card in the mind of most people. They pass it last pick at the PT, and you just get to put it in your deck. And because his deck was so good, he had all of this, you know, cheap early game, but he lacked a little bit of card advantage, then you just make it work in some way with 10 rings. I think that's awesome. Okay, and that's it basically. So if you have questions about some, I hope, you know, like this super intelligence, I hope this gave you a new perspective about pro level draft. And maybe the format is not over yet, like pre-release is coming soon, but maybe there's one more FNM draft or something, or you want to fire up an arena draft and you can try these ideas. So I hope you learned a lot, like this guy here. If there are other cards you want to know about, my thoughts, or you have some questions, you know, type in the comments. Please subscribe, and thank you very much.